Welcome to Aspirations Over Hesitations, the podcast for high-achieving women whose ambitions are bigger than their fears. I'm your host, Alli Eldridge. As a mom, wife, and Fortune 500 company retiree, I know what it's like to wear many hats while still wanting more out of life. Whether it's stepping off the corporate ladder to lean into motherhood, healing yourself from chronic health issues to bring home that miracle baby, or launching your own business, you'll be inspired by stories of women who are going for the big things in life, in spite of anxiety that they too have experienced. Here, you'll find a community of moms who can relate to wanting what others say is impossible. They embrace alternative ways of thinking, working, and being, even when it comes with some uncertainty. One thing's for sure. If you want to live an unconventional, extraordinary life full of freedom and flexibility, you have to be willing to do things a little differently. Are you ready to say yes to choosing your aspirations over hesitations? Let's jump in. Good morning, Catie. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Alli.
So for our listeners, Catie is a brand photographer for creatives and entrepreneurs who are ready to elevate their presence and grow their business by showing up as themselves. With over 15 years of experience and a deep belief that personal branding works best when it's authentic, Catie helps women ditch the curated, copy-paste look and instead embrace who they are and who they're becoming. Catie and I know each other from a committee that we're on for CEO Moms in Dallas, and she is a mom of two. She has a really great story and a lot of no BS perspectives that I think you all are going to love. So really happy to have you here today, Catie.
Thanks for inviting me on.
So as a brand photographer for entrepreneurs who embrace authenticity and individuality, I'm curious, have you always been in the photography space and had your own business, or how did you get into this?
So it's a long and winding road, but after I graduated from college, I got my first corporate job in a cubicle with in an office building. And I kind of knew a couple months in that I was probably not a great fit for the corporate life. At the time, I had a manager who was a workaholic. And I don't know actually how much older she was than me, but in my mind at the time when I was 22, I guessed that she was 35 plus probably, but she might have only been 28, but she was such a workaholic. Her work was her life. And I was I don't want that for me. So at the time, while I was working, I was a marketing assistant to this marketing manager working for a textbook publishing company of all things. I had also recently gotten engaged and was planning my own wedding and discovered there was a new wave of wedding photography that wasn't cheesy anymore, that wasn't the stereotypical Uncle Bob type photographer that we talk about in the industry. Wedding photography was becoming a little bit more artistic and personalized and just more modern. And something in that research and just reading blogs, because at the time blogs were the social media before social media, I saw kind of an escape route. And I don't know what it was in me that was I could do that. But at the time, I had also purchased my first big camera, or a professional type camera with my first official type paycheck. And it was first big ticket item that I'd ever bought. And I don't know, I was oh, I could do that. And so it kind of was doing research, finding people in my area, and a couple of photographers in the area were hey, you want to come and check this out, see if you like wedding photography? And if you like wedding photography. And I was like, sure, why not? And at the time, because I was working in a cubicle, the regular like 9 to 5 with a workaholic boss, getting to go out on the weekends and, have fun at a party and eat wedding cake seemed amazing. So long story short, or let's fast forward a few years into the future, I had started a wedding photography business, and then I realized that, and I was married by that time, that my husband was working in corporate and I was working on the weekends, and it just wasn't quite right for work-life balance. And so I pivoted my business to high school senior portraits. So high school seniors, like, celebrating that milestone and going to college or whatever you're going to do after high school. And then let's fast forward a couple more years to where I was like, oh man, I don't understand teenagers anymore. Like, they all want different things at different times. And like, why don't they want the same thing that the kids from the year before? And it was right around this time that I was just like, okay, what's happening with the business? What am I doing? I also found out that I was pregnant with my son. He is now 7. And so about a year after he was born, I was like, okay, let's come back. Are we still doing the business? Are we going to do something different? Are we still doing photography? And that was the moment that like brand photography entered the chat. And as a new mom who had been with the baby 24/7 for 12 months, essentially, I was like, I really want to talk to grownups again. I really want to have adult interaction again. And brand photography was like the perfect combination of networking, taking, like detailed type shots that I enjoyed from weddings, and then that one-on-one interaction that I got from high school senior portraits, as well as throwing in some marketing strategy and just intentionality with that. So that is how I landed on brand photography, and I've been doing that now for the last 6-7 years. And so my son is 7, and then I had my second, my daughter, who's 4, and been figuring out this whole business motherhood thing at the same time.
Yes, it is a thing to figure out for sure.
Yes.
I love how you said that it was only like 2 months into corporate that you were kind of starting to feel the signs of this isn't for me. That's just so intuitive and awesome. How long did it take you before you like officially were able to transition out into your own business?
I worked for that company for 3 years. So I think I started, I started, and then like when I moved to Texas, so actually I grew up in California. So this job was back in California. And after we got married, I moved to Texas because my husband was already working here. And so he's actually from Georgia. So it was a good like in between point.
It's very centrally located
Yeah,
between the East
centrally
Coast and
located,
the West
and it
Coast.
was oh my God, why can't I think of the word? Anyway, it was the midpoint that we're like, okay, we live here because he wasn't gonna move to California and I wasn't gonna move to Georgia. And so is what we agreed upon.
Awesome. I love that. Well, and I also love living here because we have 2 airports, so it's super easy to get anywhere, a lot of
Yes.
times without a layover.
Yes, it's nice to have a big airport that goes literally everywhere.
Yes. So you mentioned kind of the balance between working and motherhood. And I know when I heard you speak recently, you said that when you were starting out, you ran your business during nap time
Mhm.
and some limited school hours. What was that like? And kind of tactically, how did you make that work from like a scheduling,
Mhm.
logistics perspective?
Um, so I really kind of went back full time into my business when my son started preschool. So I knew that preschool hours were 9 to 2 p.m. And then, of course, you got to kind of factor in like the drive time. So
Mhm.
really, like once you get home from drop off, that's like 9:30, and then you got to leave at 1:30 to make the 2 o'clock pickup. So that's about 4 hours of dedicated time. And so I kind of had to rearrange my mindset that like I don't have as many hours as everyone else who has, either full-time childcare or no kids, or like has the big chunk of 8 hours per day to work. And so in the same type of like mindset, I also had to tell myself that it was okay. I don't, my business doesn't have to look like everybody else's, because for me, I have a business so that I can build a life. I build my business around my life instead of building my life around my business. I want to have a life first and then a business, and the business helps to fund my life, but I don't want my life just to be my business. I think it's a very American sensibility to be like work, 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 and then maybe take a vacation every 5 years, which is terrible. And I feel like I grew up for a couple of years in France and I studied abroad there in college, and their just like mindset is like you work to live, you don't live to work. And they have, I have French friends who have extended vacations, and I'm just like, okay, we need a little bit more of that in the US because we are workaholics here. And so it's never been my goal to work myself into the ground. I want to have as much of a balanced life as is possible. And so, that looks like, mapping out my calendar at the beginning of the year, mapping out my calendar at the beginning of the month, like, okay, where can I take clients? And so I have a limited schedule. And I mean, that actually lends itself well to increase my pricing and that sort of thing because I have limited time. And so I can't take everyone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much goodness in everything that you just said. Like, I love what you said about you prioritize your life first and then you find work that like fits the lifestyle that you want to have. I think that's so important. And I think so many women like that I've talked to and otherwise, like they want that too. They verbalize that that's what they want. But then when it comes down to making it happen, they will either get stuck in kind of like the negative talk and the limiting beliefs, or they'll just really struggle to figure out like how to make it work in reality, and usually financially. Do you have any tips for somebody that's kind of in that space of wanting to make it work, but feeling like it's not possible for them?
So I would say that especially if you're in a place where you're, working a full-time job, whether that's corporate or whatever the case may be, and you have kind of this vision that you're gonna do something else or, make a pivot, but you also want to be not just do it like spur of the moment, but be prepared when you're making that pivot, is to like go ahead and, try to work it into your budget as a very like pragmatic type thing to put money away, start building that like savings account or that rainy day account, to where like when you start your business or you decide to go full time within your business, you kind of have that cushion in the moments when, because entrepreneurship is a roller coaster where sometimes you got high months and other times you got low months, and it can be very unpredictable. And I know it's that like lack of perceived stability that freaks most people out about starting their own business. Like, what if this doesn't work? What if I don't make any money? But a lot of it is, I think somebody said it recently that having a business is like a lifelong personal development journey, like getting that abundant mindset and like seeing possibility and not focusing on the reasons why it couldn't work, but instead like, but what if it did work?
Yes.
And like, what would my life look like if everything I dreamt of came to be? And so, if you're like in the space where you're like, oh, I really, really want to do that, but I don't know how, I don't know where to start. Well, here's the good news is that like, you don't have to do everything all at once. You can take like steps. Maybe it's seeking out a mentor, seeking out a coach who can kind of guide you if you're like completely lost, or maybe it's seeking out like an online course or a type of coaching program and kind of dabble in on the side until you go full force to like check it out first. Because I know like it can be hard, especially when you're a woman and if you have a family. like you can't just jump ship on like the stable income, but you can build something side by side. You can start it as a side hustle. You can prove the concept to yourself, build belief in yourself and grow that confidence so that I don't think you'll ever feel ready, but you might find a point where you're like, okay, I can't do both anymore. And this has the potential to be, twice as much as like my regular job. So let's go for it. And worst case scenario, you go back to a job.
Yes. I was just talking to a client the other day, and she's in that position where like she's been working really hard on kind of the side hustle thing, and she's doing a ton. Like I'm honestly blown away at how much she is doing, given that she does have a full-time job. And she's like, I think I'm finally ready to have the talk with my husband and, talk about going all in on this full time. And I said to her, like, just imagine all the energy that you'll be able to then like pour into your business once this is your sole focus.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you were early in your business, how did your like friends and peers respond to what you were doing? What was their feedback and or support like?
So I am what I call a first generation entrepreneur. So I don't come from a long line of entrepreneurs. Like my dad was an engineer. My mom is a nurse. And so for me to start my own business was kind of like out of the norm. It wasn't like, you graduate from high school, you go to college, and then you get a job for the rest of your life. And I was like, I graduated from high school. I went to college. I tried the full-time job thing, and I was like, this is not for me. So, like at the beginning, it was a lot like, is this gonna work? Like, oh, the proverbial, oh, how's your little business type thing. But I think like once, especially with my parents, like once they heard that, I was booking like big jobs or like, multi, 4-figure type jobs, they were like, oh, okay, you're not just doing this for like $50 a thing. I mean, at the very, very beginning, like, sure, that was because I had no idea what I was doing. But many years in, like, sometimes I'm writing invoices I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I feel nervous sending these out because they're bigger than I ever expected. And it's kind of interesting because when I'm with other business people or people who own businesses, like I have no problem talking about my business. But when I'm in other circles, like at church or with, non-business people, like my neighbors or whatever, I don't always mention that I have my own business. I mean, not like because I'm embarrassed, but just like, I don't know, it doesn't really come up. And then like with people at church, sometimes they discover that they're like, oh, you have your own business, like you have, that's so cool, blah blah blah. And so I don't know, I think sometimes I underplay that I own a whole business. But at the same time, like I think now, especially that I'm not going to a full-time job anymore, like every once in a while when you're having a low month, it's like maybe you should start looking, and then it's like turns around like, oh no, we're not doing that. But it's been well received. Like my husband's been super supportive like the whole time. The like times where I was like crying because early on in my business when somebody said no and I wasn't used to hearing no's, or like when I was trying to figure out how to like do something, he's always been super supportive. And one time he heard me on a discovery call or a strategy call with a client, and he was just in a room because we share an office, and afterwards he's like, wow, you like really know what you're talking about. I was like, oh, good. Yeah, I do. I mean, sometimes I forget, but yeah, like it's interesting to hear the outside perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always funny when our husbands hear us with like our business hat on or like our work speak on. You talked about like owning your own business, but also like I want to give you credit for like starting it. Like this is something that like you built from the ground up, like piece by piece. And I think sometimes people like when you were talking about believing in yourself, people that are in corporate are like, well, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I have the discipline or the skills. It's like, anyone who works in corporate has the skills.
Hmm.
Like you have so many skills in corporate that can then be applied to like all the facets of having your own business, regardless of like what your niche is. It's all the strategy, like you mentioned, and the behind the scenes stuff, project management, marketing. Like I think sometimes people really underestimate what they bring to the table in those spaces.
For sure.
You mentioned also like you lived in France for several years, and when you were talking about being the first in your family to take this path and have this different mindset really from the get-go, do you think that it was living in France and seeing that different culture that opened your mind, or was there something else that you would attribute it to?
No, I think for sure that's like getting to live that lifestyle that's just so different, even though it like doesn't seem that different, but the culture and the lifestyle is built upon, the French word joie de vivre, like joy of living. um so I think that plays a big part of it. Secretly, I'm always plotting. I'm like, how can I go live abroad, like either part-time or, figure out some visa to go live there. Just because like the culture dynamic, the way of living is slower. It's, you enjoy eating, you walk more, you spend time living versus a lot of times in the US is like you spend your whole life working, and then once you're old, that's when you get to travel, which seems very kind of backwards and like, oh, but what am I working for? So I think that definitely kind of readjusted the way I see the world and the way I see that I wanted my life to be, because I'm just like, work is work, but like you only have one life. And so you may as well enjoy it. If that means you make less money, that's okay. Like, I'd rather make less money, but have a more vibrant life that I enjoy and can remember and spend with my kids than, have all the money in the world, but be miserable and, yeah, be miserable.
And be inside all day. Like,
Right.
yeah, because
Right.
like you were talking about with the differences in lifestyle, it's like you're out and about, you're taking your time to eat, you're walking,
Hmm.
you're getting sunshine. Like, it's just
Hmm.
such a healthier lifestyle.
Yes.
You talk a lot about visibility, of course, as a brand photographer, and that's something that matters a lot when somebody has their own business and especially when they're first starting it. I know from being a life coach, it's also a huge like block that people have and fear that people have is putting themselves out there and being visible and opening themselves up to criticism, judgment, skepticism, whatever you want to call it. What advice do you have for people that are trying to like get over that
Mhm.
and feel comfortable putting themselves out there?
So, unless you're an absolute extrovert who gets energy from people around you all the time, I would say it's hard for most people, but it's a lot of practice and getting those reps in. Because I remember even just like 2 years ago, talking face to camera felt terrifying and paralyzing to me. And if like you follow me on social media now, you would think I was lying because I look and appear to be very comfortable talking face to camera. I used to find it really difficult to listen to the sound of my own voice, as I think a lot of people do. But it's a lot of that just doing it and repetition and like feeling the fear and doing it anyway and hitting publish and just kind of like, okay, I know I need to do this for myself to have more visibility amongst the people who need my help. I need more visibility just so people know what it is that I do, how I can help, so that if they know somebody who needs my help, they can refer me, because if you build it, they will come is the biggest myth in the business world. That only works if like you're a celebrity and people already know about you. But if nobody knows about you, nobody's going to know about you. So building in a strategy for visibility, whether that's going to networking events, whether that's setting up one-on-ones with people, other businesses that you know or you want to get to know, whether that's attending live events, going live on social media, having a presence um, locally, going on like a local speaking circuit, speaking at networking events, whatever it kind of takes and whatever is both your comfort level and also discomfort level to go do and put yourself out there, I would encourage you to do. And like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a lot like working out. You have to put your reps in, and gradually over time you get stronger and stronger. And I think also, like, when it comes to, looking at yourself, hearing yourself, like seeing the way that you carry yourself, you get better and better at it the more that you practice it. But if you never do it because you're too scared to put yourself out there in the first place, you're going to stay stuck. And when it comes to building your own business, unless you have a marketing team behind you and it's just you, like, you got to put in the work to get out there, to find those clients, to show others that you know what it is that you're talking about, to show them that, like, yes, I can help you do this thing, and to get you that transformation. So it's really like ripping off the Band-Aid every single day, being like, I'm not gonna die if I try to do this. I can do this. And there's some movie where it's like it takes 20 seconds of courage to do whatever. So find that 20 seconds of courage and repeat it day after day. And then after a while, it's like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and also what you said, it's all about the people that you're trying to help. And so I think if you can look at it through that lens, it takes a little bit of like the pressure or the focus off of you and makes it more about them. When you look back on your own journey as a business owner and a mother, what hesitations or fears did you have that you had to overcome to get to where you are today?
I think a lot of it was that, like, visibility piece for me, because I am more of an introvert. Like, I remember when I went to my first networking event ever as a photographer and going to that and being like, couldn't even say, oh, I'm a photographer. I remember how hard it was to just say that because I didn't have that much experience. And I was like, I'm a photographer. And just like how far I've come of like just being able to, speak to whoever. And that was definitely a hesitation. It's like a personal belief in yourself and what it is that you do. Because especially if like you're coming from corporate or you're coming from a vastly different industry, and you decide you're going to do this new thing, the imposter syndrome inevitably pops up for most of us. Like it's there, like, who do you think you are to be doing this thing? But like when you have and you grow and you build that experience, it becomes easier and easier to say. But I remember, like, I would have hesitations too, because I'd be worried about, like, oh, well, what's the other person gonna think? Or like, what if they reject me? And all of the like typical normal things that most people get in their heads about. But like, have to remind ourselves that like the worst case scenario is a no, or you get ignored, and like, that's okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't for them. It wasn't for it, and got you that rep. It got you that practice, and it's taking that one step forward in the direction of where you want to take your business and who you want to help. And it's getting that practice in, and over time it becomes easier. But it's the hesitation point, the like taking the leap, the taking the step, the hitting the send button is always can feel like the most terrifying part, because I think we all like certainty. And so once we do that, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the part that's scary.
Yeah.
But then you do it and you're like, okay, like, I'm fine. Let's regulate our nervous system and move on.
Yeah. Well, and you start to also realize that there wasn't as much certainty as you thought there was in
Mhm.
like the old world. And
Right.
maybe other people were more responsible for that level of certainty versus like you being responsible for it yourself. I'd love to talk a little bit about the rewards that come from living this life that you've chosen. What are some of just like the biggest things that you get to experience that like really make you happy and make you feel like, it was all worth it, even the challenges that you did have to overcome along the way?
Yeah. So when my kids were born, it was like really nice to not be on a ticking time clock of like maternity leave. Like spent the first year raising my babies. They were at home. I was at home full time. Like I could take care of them. I could work during their nap time. Just like the flexibility that having my own business provides me is probably the biggest part. Like I'm able to pick them up from preschool. I'm able to, take them to their activities. We can go on vacation and I'm not having to ask someone if I can go on vacation. My husband still has to do that, but like I want to build that into it not being such a rare occasion, but rather like something we do regularly. So like for me, I'm like taking time off is part of it. Like I want to build that into what's normal for our family. But really like the biggest piece I think overall has been just the flexibility to do what I want and on my own schedule and on my own time without having to ask anyone but myself, like, okay, can we do this? Like, are we going to take some time off? Like, can we go travel wherever it is? Like, and just kind of like instilling in my children that kind of worldview that I have that I got from living elsewhere. And I want to be able to show that to them because we're not just meant to work. We're meant to enjoy life. And, if for them that's like working in corporate, that's totally fine. That's fine with me. I'm not like anti-corporate or anything like that. But also for them to see beyond, to see what possibilities are also out there. And it's kind of like it's such a like a mindset shift when you become an entrepreneur of like just how kind of everything turns on its head. Like now you're in charge of everything, but also there's so much possibility. There's not really like a cap on like your income. There's not a cap on like your vacation time. I mean, yes, you're responsible for all the things, but at the same time, I just feel more free and more flexible and just like this is what I want for my life, and to just see it from that like new perspective that this is possible instead of being like kind of shoved into a box of like, you work your 40-hour work week and you get maybe your 2 weeks off during the year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love what you said about just opening their eyes to the possibilities. And I think
Mhm.
that even as adults, especially if you are someone that's been working in corporate for a long time, that's really important to do. And I would encourage you to like, when you are off for a week, just go around town and like kind of see what other people are doing, realize that not everybody is commuting to this corporate office where they're inside all day long. And also taking away some of maybe your preconceived notions of like how these people are able to be out and about. Like it's
Mhm.
not just because they're all these ultra wealthy trust fund babies. Like it is because they have these different businesses or they work in, even in different office settings, not necessarily corporate, that give
Mhm.
them more freedom and flexibility. Tell us a little bit more about how you work with clients and how people can work with you if they are local to DFW or if you travel.
Um, I do travel every once in a while, kind of depending on the client and the client's needs. But so I work primarily with female entrepreneurs who are in like a growth mode stage of their business. So, they kind of have an established business, but they know that they're ready for more. They're ready for bigger clients, or you just kind of a different type of clientele that they're ready to serve. And so on my part, as the brand photographer, I help create the visuals to help transport them into that kind of like new era of their business. I work a lot with brand designers and web designers, kind of in tandem, and we work collaboratively to help create that vision for those clients. And so a typical photo shoot includes, having a strategy call so that we can figure out like the types of photos and like where are they using the photos. Let's say it's on their website, social media, marketing, if they have a YouTube channel, if they have a podcast, if they have a billboard, whatever the case may be, and finding all of those like use cases, as well as knowing like who is their ideal client that they want to connect with and speak to directly, because a lot of it has to do with their messaging. And once you kind of get farther into your business, you realize how much messaging matters. And then it can go, completely full service where we have hair and makeup and a stylist and locations. And then, yeah, so it's kind of like, lead you through. We'd go have the actual photo shoot where, tell you how to pose, where to stand, what to wear, all that stuff. And then goes into implementation, either with me or if they're working with like a web designer, to get those all into motion so that you can launch your new website or your rebrand or whatever the new product is, so that you're speaking to like your best fit client. Because at a certain point, like when you start your business, typically it's DIY or it's like, friend with a camera, which is totally fine because that'll get you to a certain point. But I think we realize that what got you here won't get you there. And so having that elevation, having those outside strategic pair of eyes can really help you level up your business to where you want to take it. And so, yeah, I am based in DFW and I accept clients all over DFW. I have traveled. I have a client in California and clients in Florida. So, I travel every now and then. And yeah.
Awesome. We'll travel if there is a beach. That's my motto.
Yes.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to share, Catie, before we wrap up today?
Yeah, like I think personal branding is a really important piece that I think people tend to overlook. Like when they start a business, sometimes they think they can just sell the product, sell the service, and like hide behind it. But I often tell clients, people I'm talking to, other business owners, that like the most powerful way to create a connection with somebody else who could use your service is for them to know who you are, and to be the face of the business, to be the voice of the business. Because like if you think about it, if there's like 3 realtors out there, like who are you going to pick? I mean, all of them sell houses, all of them help you buy houses, but like what makes you stand out? It's the person themselves. And it's kind of the same thing with any industry. We can all like, there's tons of photographers out there, there's tons of like life coaches out there. Like, how are you going to decide on the person who's right for you? And if you're hiding behind your business, if you're hiding behind your business name, hoping that just your service or your product is going to sell itself, it might, but it's going to be way more impactful if you have that personal touch of like why you do what you do. Who are you at the core? Like why are you in this? Why are you helping who you help? And I often say that like having a personal brand doesn't mean that you have to share your like private life or your private details. You can build a personal brand without ever sharing anything about your private life. But what it comes down to is sharing a little bit more personality type driven content and just sharing who you are. Because if you have a business, you should be willing to share who you are as a person, because that's what's motivating you behind like what you're doing in your business. So, if you're kind of testing the waters of like, okay, am I starting a business? What am I doing? At the very bare minimum, I would say start building a personal brand, like as your name, because when you have your name and your personal brand, if you decide to pivot, if like at one moment, you're like a marketing strategist and then you decide like, I don't know if I want that anymore. And then you want to go more into, I don't know, strategic consulting, which is different, but you can take that along with you because you are still the same person. And when you have that personal brand, you can pivot much more easily than if you're changing like between business names. So that is my soapbox on personal branding.
I love that so much. And it's so true when you think about people like Sarah Blakely. Like I follow her. I don't know that I follow Spanx the brand, maybe, but like she's the one whose content I am excited to see when it pops up in my stories. Well, thanks again, Catie, for coming on. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
That's a wrap on our conversation today. Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please leave a review and comment below. It really helps a lot, especially in the beginning of a new show. Also, I cannot wait for y'all to hear the next episode. Every single woman that I have had the pleasure of speaking to as part of this process has such a unique and powerful story to share, and I hope that you will find each one of them as inspiring as I have.